These other cases, these financial crimes, are actually really easy to prove because, like I said, follow the money. Here comes the money out of the insurance company, and here's the victim of the accident. Oh, but it goes right over to Murdaugh. Fucking A. How hard is that to prove? Not very hard.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled Sorry. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled edition of... What is this? Criminal Lawyer Reacts? That's me. Criminal Lawyer Reacts. That's me. Hey, and we have a content genius. What's his name? Michael Rivers. Now, you might notice a little difference. I had a little eye issue, and so I'm not wearing my contacts, but these are my spectacles that I wear at night. So you can see what I look like just before I lay my head on my pillow. But today we are reacting to Murdaugh. And remember, he was also charged, aside from the homicides that he was charged with, the murders that he was charged with, he was also charged with 99 financial crimes. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But guess what? This is brought to you by our great partners at eSign.com. eSign.com has been a very loyal partner for quite a long time for us, and we really appreciate them, and so should you. You know why? Because it's an incredibly easy way to remotely do business. If you have an agreement that you need written, well, you can write it yourself, or you can go to contractscouncil.com to write it. But if you have an agreement that you need signed fast, or just, mechanically, it's easier to do it online, which usually it is, go to eSign.com. eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely sign documents. It can be anything from a power of attorney. I do it all the time. All kinds of documents, medical releases, retainer agreements, anything you need signed, you can use eSign.com. Makes business seamless, easy, because if it's not eSign, no one signs. All right, so just within the last week, Alec Murdaugh's attorneys appeared in court, and they're trying to set a trial date. Let's just catch a little glimpse of this. He appears, remember in the trial, he was wearing regular clothes, and now he appears in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. What a fall from grace, honestly. I mean, he had a fourth-generation law firm, fourth generation. That means his father was a lawyer, his grandfather was a lawyer, and that means his great-grandfather was a lawyer. Over 100 years. I mean, that was amazing to have that kind of lineage, honestly. And now he's in an orange jumpsuit.
Murdaugh, Your Honor, is aware he's been indicted in a slew of state grand jury charges, and I'm happy to...
Now look at the smile on his face. Look at the smirk on that son of a bitch's face. He probably feels like he's in a familiar environment, because he is. I mean, he's been in court 1,000 times before, right? But he's not. He's not in a familiar environment because he is a defendant. He's a defendant and a convicted... Well, I think they haven't reversed his charges yet, but I bet you any money he gets a new trial on the other one, because remember we talked a little bit about that the poor person, or the clerk, did some stuff with the jury in that case. But he's got all these charges related to financial crimes that he committed, stealing clients' money, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But his smile here is so out of place. He probably still thinks he's a big shot in that community.
Numbers into the record, they are extensive. We have 2021 GS 4727 in Orangeburg County, containing a number of white-collar counts. 2021 GS 4728 in Bamberg County. These were indicted in the state grand jury in November of 2021. We have 2021 GS 4729 in Allendale County, also indicted in November 21. 2021 GS 4730 in Beaufort County, also indicted in November 2021.
So they're going through all these charges. We don't need to hear all that. But let me tell you a little bit about what his crimes are. So he would tell people that they either didn't settle or they settled for less or whatever. We had a guy here in Minnesota that did the same thing, and it wound up being about $9 million, a little over, and that was 20 years ago. And what he was doing was he'd get a settlement for $300,000, right? and he'd tell the client that it settled for $100,000, and he would have the client sign whatever documents, and probably not the real documents. He would pocket $200,000 plus take a third of the 100. So I mean, so he'd take more than 2/3 of the fee, and that's the kind of shit that this guy was doing, just out and outright theft.
One total charges for an alleged loss of almost $8.8 million.
So that's almost $9 million, kind of the same thing.
Your Honor, the state is here, as we have discussed, I believe, back in April, requesting a trial date for Mr. Murdaugh. I believe that we look at some of the other co-conspirators that Corey Fleming has pled was supposed to go to trial this week.
So the co-conspirator that pled, he got 20 years. 20 years. And you can't do this shit alone. I mean, generally speaking, you need somebody to help you out a little bit. Here's the shit about it. And this is why we lawyers get bad names, okay? People trust us. They trust us with their money. They trust us with their lives. And when you abuse that trust, you need to be held to a higher standard. So you steal somebody's money or you screw somebody over using your ability as a lawyer in federal court, you get an enhancement for that. You get an upgrade. Not upgrade. It's really a downgrade because you're going to get more prison time. There was a judge, a Court of Appeals judge, and he got special permission to handle this developmentally challenged girl's estate because her parents died and she got a huge amount of money. He stole $600,000 from somebody who couldn't defend herself. And he got special fucking permission to do it. And he wound up going to prison for it. Moron, your bus is leaving. What the hell? I mean, I don't understand how, I worked my ass off to get my law license, okay? I didn't do that great in college, but I did really well in law school. And remember when I was talking about building and making good decisions? You start by stealing a little bit of money, and you're going to put it back. But you forget to put it back, or you just don't get to it. But now you need a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. And it's like pulling the thread on a sweater, and pretty soon there's no fucking sweater left. And then everybody wonders, where the fuck is the money? And that's what happens on a Ponzi scheme, too.
But Mr. Murdaugh remains the state's priority, and I believe the case that is the priority would be the case involving the Satterfield, Your Honor. That by far represents the greatest single loss among all the victims. That would be 2021 GS 4730, being here in Beaufort County. And the state is intent and requesting the court to schedule a trial date as soon as reasonably possible, sometime before the end of this year, to try.
Look at that packed courtroom. Now, one of the things that the defense lawyers are saying is, how the hell are we going to get a fair trial here, Judge? We can't get a fair trial. This has been a circus from the beginning.
All right, Mr. Courtroom. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, there are a number of different objections we have to trying any of these cases this year. We previously got the impression from Your Honor when we met at the last status conference that you would not be trying any of these cases and you'd be leaving the bench on January 1.
Tell me about that impression again.
That was my impression.
That sounded like shit. Sorry about that.
I've done that from time to time during this process. If I did, I apologize. But in the meantime, Mr. Griffin and I have scheduled other matters this fall. Both he and I have a federal trial in December. Before that, Your Honor, and I think I mentioned this the last time we talked, I have a...
This happened. This is totally normal stuff where the lawyers talk, they trying to finagle court dates. So let's take a look at the co-conspirator real quick, because that really informs as to where this case is going.
Now, since coming here for Murdaugh and doing that trial in March, and I was back here 2 weeks ago for another trial in Colleton County. A mother who had been Teacher of the Year in the school system there left her 13-year-old totally handicapped and disabled child in a car beginning at 11 a.m. when it was 91 degrees outside. and left that child in the car until about 5 or 6 p.m. And a climatologist testified that the temperature in that car got up to 139 degrees. And you're talking about remorse, and the testimonies and presentations over this mother and her mistake. She was on methamphetamine with her boyfriend. As remorseful, I cannot imagine anyone giving me a presentation of a mother who loved her child and who went wayward and more concerned about using drugs and pleasing her boyfriend than caring for her child. And she got 37 years in prison, convicted of murder.
One of the things, and the reason we showed you this is because one of the things they do in a sentencing hearing is they compare cases, because you can't have a sentencing disparity. That's one of the goals of sentencing, is to avoid that. In other words, you have one person who did this, and then someone who's similar should be sentenced unless there's some compelling reason to sentence them differently, right? And so that's what he's talking about here.
Well, it was 2 weeks ago here in the same 14th Circuit. And the folks who came to talk with him and said, you know, she loved her child. Nothing she wouldn't do for her child.
So one of the things that you see as a judge, it's very, very difficult for a judge to do. Number one, I don't think it's ever easy for a judge to send somebody to prison, you know, and it shouldn't be. But they have to weigh all the factors. They can't just ignore a defense. Just like that, they can't ignore what the victims are saying, right?
They had her child in the Special Olympics, but she abandoned the child. And so when I'm listening to Mr. Bamberg talk about Mr. Pinckney, Hakeem Pinckney, I'm thinking of that same type of vulnerability.
And what he's talking about is, first of all, the conduct between Murdaugh and this Corey Fleming, who's being sentenced here, is so prolific, number one. I mean, it was a lot of people. And number two, it's a lot of money, almost $9 million. And number three, it's the vulnerable of the vulnerable. These are personal injury cases. These are people who have either lost a loved one or they're injured in some way that disfigures them. And if it's good, big money, like we're talking about here, they're probably really injured.
That child had, he was a child at the time, wasn't he?
He was a late teen, I believe, Your Honor.
Yeah. And so he placed his trust in a respected member of the bar, a very respected member of this community. And I could tell that by all of the folks here.
Yeah, see, look at all these people showing up, and they're probably people of support. But at some point, you have to pay the piper. At some point, your conduct, as prolific as it is, and as great a person as you might want everybody to believe, it's just too much.
I sometimes say that there isn't very much between any of us. We all have good and we all have bad, and certainly everyone was here to tell me about all the good in Mr. Fleming, but we're dealing with the consequences of the bad, and that is as bad as it gets in this case for a lawyer who has a prior record.
A prior record. Guess what? You're fucked, buddy. You know, when you take into account, you know, somebody who is a first-time offender, okay, I get it. You know, you're a first-time, you don't... Oh, wait, you're not a first-time offender. You've done this before. That's when you get whacked.
He has no prior convictions, but when you carry on a scheme of over a decade, that's a record. Record that did not result in charges or convictions, but a record of his life.
That's what we call relevant conduct. and in the federal system, it's called relevant conduct, conduct that might not have been charged, but you can take into consideration when it comes to sentencing. And when you have a pattern of fraud and theft that goes back a decade, how many people in your wake have there been that didn't get discovered? I mean, fucking A, God damn it. You give us a bad name. Well, what do they call 100 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? A good start. I mean, give me a fucking break.
And as bad as it was with Mr. Pinckney, then we moved to the Satterfields. Again, vulnerable people. So I imagine, and I know that many of the friends and family and colleagues were totally shocked, not at what the good Corey Fleming has done over a period of time, but this court.
And this shit, when you sit through this shit as a defense lawyer, it's painful. It is just painful. Because it's like standing on the railroad tracks, you can't get off the railroad tracks, and here comes a slow-moving train.
Corey Fleming in these cases. And quite frankly, when the people come to me and wanted to lay the burden on me, said, Judge, please be lenient, that's not my responsibility. I believe in justice and mercy.
Oh, being lenient is not my responsibility. Okay, so, all right, give it to me straight. How, am I going to grab my ankles right now, or what the fuck? Yeah, so, I mean, he's, foreshadowing exactly what's going to happen here.
But leniency is not part of Micah, the scripture.
Said leniency is not part of my scripture.
Facing 195 years in prison.
And when you have multiple victims, generally speaking, that gives the judge the opportunity to give you multiple sentences, consecutive, because a sentence can be either concurrent or consecutive. Concurrent means if I've got, let's see, I have a burglary case here and I got a robbery case here, and the judge says, okay, we can sentence them concurrently. That means I get 5 years on each and I do them both at the same time. That means basically 2 for 1, right? But consecutive means one after the other. And generally speaking, when you have victims, you can give consecutive sentence for separate victims.
Anything else before I impose my sentence? All right, Mr. Fleming, if you'd come around for sentencing.
I do like his outfit. And the leather, I think the leather does go with the blue stripes.
My heart bleeds for you because I have no doubt of the quality of human being that you are, as reflected by all of the positive comments. But you must suffer the consequences of your actions in these cases that you're standing before me for, and tempering justice with mercy.
And a judge is supposed to be dispassionate and tempering justice with mercy, and remember what he said? Leniency is not in my vocabulary, basically. And I think this judge is calm. He's not a pushover. I watched a big chunk of the Murdaugh trial, and I thought he was reasoned and gave him a fair trial. So I kind of like him.
It's my responsibility to impose a sentence. And there are so many. If I were to spend time here now imposing a sentence on each of these indictments individually, we'd be here for a few hours probably. So suffice it to say, with regard to the Satterfields, and need my clerk here.
So Gloria Satterfield was a housekeeper for the Murdaughs. She died, and Murdaugh just stole the money. I mean, was appointed as counsel for her and just stole her money. That should have gone to her family.
On count 10, where the exposure is 0 to 5, the sentence is 5 years. I wrote insurance. Is that insurance fraud?
Yes, sir.
That is count number or indictment number.
We don't have to go through this whole thing, but he gets 20 years. He goes through, and it's painful to sit there. I mean, you get kind of a sense what it's like to be in the courtroom, and when you're a defense lawyer and you're sitting there, and I mean, when you're dealing with document cases, you don't really have much of a defense, generally speaking, especially on stuff like this. When you have money coming out, well, where's it going? Did it not go to its intended target? No, it didn't. It went into the pockets of this guy in Murdaugh. So Murdaugh has now, after they kind of got a trial date set, he's agreed to plead guilty. So let me just read what this article is kind of going over. Alex Murdaugh is expected to plead guilty to nearly 24 federal charges related to financial crimes that started more than a decade ago, according to documents filed on Monday. Now, you're thinking, a decade ago? Well, how is it possible that he's still charged? Doesn't the statute of limitations apply? Well, not when you got an ongoing criminal enterprise. So if you have the theft and it's ongoing and there's a conspiracy, it's an ongoing criminal enterprise. So the statute of limitations doesn't toll until the end of the criminal enterprise. And in this case, it didn't end until he got taken into custody for killing his wife and son. God, I just can't even imagine killing Michael for, half of my YouTube money? I mean, who the fuck would do that? I mean, I just don't understand, violent crimes. I can understand you catch your wife in bed with somebody, you shoot the guy. That's a heat of passion. I get that. But, just outright killing somebody just because, going into a mall shooting somebody, or you're somebody next to you, your wife. I mean, I can't understand beating your wife or beating your son. Are you just laying your hands on people you're supposed to love? Anyway, so he's agreed to plead guilty. And you saw that his co-conspirator got 20 years. What do you think Murdaugh's going to get? I mean, he's the principal. He's the one in charge of everything. And you're going to hear another speech almost identical to what the judge just gave you. There isn't going to be a trial for Murdaugh on the financial crimes. I mean, who gives a shit about that anyway? I mean, I take that back. I shouldn't have said that. What I mean is, in terms of his sentence, it's going to be eaten up by the 2 consecutive life sentences anyway, unless he gets a new trial and gets acquitted. But I don't think they're confident that that's going to happen. And these other cases, these financial crimes, are actually really easy to prove. Because like I said, follow the money. Here comes the money out of the insurance company, and here's the victim of the accident. Oh, but it goes right over to Murdaugh. Fucking A. How hard is that to prove? Not very hard. And we as lawyers, we get a trust account. We have a trust account that's not our own money. We put our client's money in there. So, let's say I get a check from the insurance company for a $90,000 settlement. I got my client $90,000, and so what happens is I take that. The check is usually written out to both of us. So I write my name on the check. The client signs the check, and then the client also signs up what they call a settlement statement. Shows the breakdown of all the fees and the costs and that kind of thing. And then the client signs a settlement statement, which shows a breakdown of the fees and the costs and all that kind of stuff. And then you put the check in the bank. Once the check clears, then you write yourself a check for the fees and costs, and you write the client a check for usually whatever the balance is. And hopefully, if you do it right, they get more than you do. A lot of clients don't get as much. And those, I would never have a case where a client got less than I got. That's just unconscionable, in my opinion. That's the way it's supposed to work. But what it goes on here is the check comes in, he signs it, and he signs the client's name on it. Banker doesn't fucking know. And so they put it in the trust account, or actually he probably doesn't even put it in the trust account. Or he sets up a different account, and he puts it in the bank, and then he takes the whole thing. Or he takes more than he's supposed to. And that's what, you're entrusted with their life. And we have a responsibility to the public, to our clients, to each other as human beings. And I take that very, very, very seriously. So, this is our reaction to Alex Murdaugh and his flipping ways and what's going to happen to him. So no matter what happens with his murder trial, he's going to probably get 20 plus. I bet he gets more than 20 years. That judge is going to whack him pretty good. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you stay right and honorable and build. And subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for Patreon. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, police is at my god.